assist a company that aligns nicely with you. I mean, that's the beauty of, the integrated model, is that we are one, messaging-wise. And by the way, Life is Good and Life is Good Kids Foundation, we battle a lot because there are real issues with regard to positioning and whatever. But the battles are all for the benefit of the kids, so they're good and they're healthy. So if you ever got a nonprofit to be successful, convincing, if you will, and selling the power of an integrated model with a new company, it won't be without challenge and pain, but it'll be everything worth it. And I think you can make a case that companies that are not authentic with this going forward will be at a disadvantage. I'm out of time. I love being with you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So when we talk about professionalism, I think there's a sort of sense in our communities that fishermen, in that sort of stereotypical, ridiculous way that we think of people sometimes, are just guys who basically sort of get up in the morning and put on some boots and go offshore. It is way different than that. And as we redefine the idea of professionalism, when you start talking about government intervention, when you start talking about technology, when you start talking about marketing, when you start talking about six-figure investments on a regular basis to keep your independent business going, you're talking about fishermen. Is that I don't want to embarrass a guy like Sam, but you're not going to meet a more professional person than this at 25 years old on Cape Cod. You just aren't. So the more that we talk, the more that we see each other, the more apparent it's going to be that those stereotypes are BS.
We have to adapt to, we talk a lot about the millennials and their attitude. That is not, it is not them. Okay, so this has happened before. This has happened in history where the older generations don't communicate the same way as the younger generations. And we have to adapt and help them adapt with us to become a team.
Something. So, for us to create some of these flex schedules, whether it's a 4-day work week or so forth, we can't do that. We've talked about it. We'd love to go to a 4-day work week. It works sometimes. It just doesn't work for an organization like us that have clients that will call at any time. Somebody's got to answer the phone, even with backup people and so forth. So clients get in the way, but they also sign our paychecks. So we got
to be flexible, even about, I'm going to come in a half an hour late. It is very difficult because that might mean somebody else can't go home, that they're relieving. But then for those people whose jobs could accommodate that flexibility, it's a problem for us because we don't want it to look like it's not fair to the person whose job can't do that. And you want to be able to offer people what you can in terms of flexibility. So bringing that all together in a way that works is an increasing challenge for us, for sure.
That generation, millennials, they really are about what more can they do in an organization. They really want, they love the training, the development. They want access to everybody, including myself, which I actually love. But they want access to everybody. So as a manager, you got to allow that. They're going to go by you. They're going to go talk to John sometimes. That's okay. So there's some of that training. But it's how do you having that conversation with them about the future, because that's where they live a lot of the time. Is not in the present, in the 9 to 5. It's what can I do next? How can I contribute more? So the conversation has changed about the career path. A lot about the career path is financial. How can I make more money and so forth? Because that is very important.
This year. So the advocacy training is really where you come in, because municipal officials can work really hard all day long, but Cape Cod, most towns on the Cape, not all towns, most towns have town meeting. So this is the closest we're going to get to direct democracy, people, which means that you actually get to decide what happens in your communities. And if you're not showing up to support these housing initiatives, then municipal officials really can only get so far, right? So you are a really critical piece of this.
We started a new program called Rent 365. We're actually paying people who who are second homeowners $1,000 if they're willing to, instead of renting it out weekly, to rent it out year round. So, or if it's vacant, if maybe it's in a home that's in your family that you haven't used in a while, if you would rent it out year round, we'll give you $1,000. We'll help you rent it out, give you a lease, kind of help walk you through the process. And our goal is 25 units in the first year. We have about 16 that have been converted.
Because NIMBYs who have the time to engage in the process have a tried and true tactic of showing up and basically pecking to death a proposal and watering it down as much as can be. So that's why we need to be there to push back against that.
I mean, the reality is the future of the Cape does not sit with people like me. I'm over 50, all right? I am not the future of the Cape, you are. And if you want the Cape to become what you need it to be, to have the housing supply, to have sustainable economic development, to have opportunities for your children and your families, then you need to be the ones driving the train. So we need you to run for committees, we need you to run for office. You know.
And my question is for this gentleman from Provincetown. I find it kind of disappointing that you said that you only have 3 units so far. Is that because of the relative newness of it and the bureaucratic inertia? And it just seems kind of disappointing, especially with the median age in this county. You would think the age in place factor would.
The challenge you have is you have a market demand by people, and yes, everybody has a relative who may need some housing. The challenge is, are the people who are going to actually build them, do they want them? So, I think it's more productive in a median market where there's probably $350,000 or something like that of people who are buying into it and they don't have really enough money to support their home and they need extra cash income. But when you reach the outer Cape and the income levels reach the levels they are and the property values reach the levels they are, the folks who have that money don't need to have a supported unit in their property. We have a lot of property owners who literally rent year round for only one reason, because they care.
Being a business owner on Cape Cod versus a business owner off Cape.
I just wanted to win. My first thought is that so many people here are affected seasonally as business owners, and what a lot of people look at as a negative, I kind of find it interesting because it gives you a pause point at the end of the year where you can actually think about what went right and what went wrong, and you can strategize for the next year. Whereas a lot of times if you're in a full-on year-round business, you never really get that time to kind of step away and work on your business instead of in the business.
Awesome. Talk more.
All right.
Rob, do you have
What do I do?
You have an answer?
I have an answer.
So you can go back.
I don't have an answer for that, but I'll answer the question. I think one of the things that's different about doing business on the Cape is, well, I think it depends on where your customers are. Because a lot of people are doing business on the Cape, but their customers are global and they're in the cloud. But if your customers are here on the Cape, I think one of the big things that's different is understanding how, what's the right word, not undense the population is and how diversified it
is what I call your human capital. It's very unique and quite extraordinary in this region. When you think about it, there are a number of people who see this region as a place they would like to be at some point in their lives and move in a stage in life where they've really accomplished some extraordinary things. And a large percentage of them are in what I call the give back mode. We're kind of in that business. We look for people in their give back mode because there's tremendous capabilities there. So they can help through mentorship, and I think that Eberall and others help try to line that up. And they can also help on a number of other dimensions.
Rather than, so I'm selling a product, I sell popcorn. What I kind of switch that into is I'd rather sell an experience, because people will post and share and talk about an experience rather than a bag of popcorn or
an effort into growing our Facebook following. Sarah and Dan are correct. The algorithms change all the time, so you have to keep coming up with different ways to get into people's feeds if you want to avoid making Mark Zuckerberg richer.
And, you know, explaining my business one-on-one. I do need to utilize social media more, but my growth has actually come from my one-on-one experiences.
So you've just made some great connections. You learned something about one another. You've learned something maybe about yourself that you didn't even know was there.
I've just started talking.
That's where it has to begin, right? You have to start there. You have to start talking with people. Without that, without trying to make the connections, it's not going to happen. So you can put your papers down, and we're going to go. Side by side. One step forward. Bend those knees just a little bit. Look at your neighbor. Smile. Because it's going to be fun. Right? But really right around you. Bring it over to one side. Give it a good push. So push your belly button forward to backward. Go further. And remember, having that appropriate poop space is absolutely key. So push. Forward, back, the other. Just push that belly button forward and backwards. Forward, backwards. Forward, backwards. Forward, backwards. Stop. All right, you go right.
So now, when you're back at your company, or you go to that next Chamber of Commerce event, you don't have to be the person like leaning up against the veggies, like in the dip, like when is this over? I'm either going to strangle someone or I'm going to strangle myself. So you now have a chance to change the expectations. And how can you do that? Well, one is you can ask a silly question. So forget about whether I blew your right or left brains with the whole spelling thing. But the point is, I didn't ask you to please talk about a challenge you overcome. Okay? That's expectations. Okay? Just like with Jesse, and just as you're about to do with Jen again. Like, if you want to really get connected to somebody, you just have to blow the expectations out of the water.
I tell managers all the time, stop. So what Nick was saying, and I'm sure you see this in HR, how we learn is so different. I could tell Paul something right now, and Paul could take it in a totally different way, but I think I've done my job as his manager to say, oh, what's wrong? I told you. No. You need to stop, cut it in thirds. What's mine? What's his? What's ours? And if you're leading with what's his, game over. All right? So, again, going back to that idea of resistance, once you feel something, stop, wait, and then figure out what your third is and own it in that conversation.
When I do your evaluations with them, I have separate categories: time for paid work, time for work, like working hours, time for paid off, and then separate PTO. And then I break it down with like what their benefits. I show them what I pay them in health insurance. Okay, I show that because my $75,000 hire cost me over $100,000. And as the employer, I want them to know that because I also don't want them, I also want to give them those benefits because I don't want them at their desk thinking about if their kid is sick.
The worst part of a termination is when you're sitting there and you're having that conversation with someone and they say something and you stutter. Or you say, oh, well, I'll fix that. There's no fixing once we're ready to go. That document is set. Like, I don't care what is on there, we're moving forward. We're gonna keep on rolling. If it's a mistake, then we're gonna have to live with it and we're gonna have to get through it. But part of the reason is, if you start crossing things out, if you start stuttering, it makes it look like this was not a completely 100% solid term. They're gonna know that, and that tips them off with the, oh, you should get a lawyer. You should do this, you should do that. That sparks that, and that makes them feel like they can do that. As managers, it also feels really good when you walk in and you feel secure that this is right, this is what should be done, whether it be for the customer, the guest, the patient, for the coworkers, because sometimes they may be great employees, but they're horrible people, right? That happens. They can't work with anyone, then, you know, go work for yourself.
You know, maybe I could, but I would. There's no doubt in my mind that the trajectory of my career would have been completely different and not nearly as productive if I had not been here. And I hope that my talk gave some sense of why I feel that way. I love living in a small town. Most of the and in communities like this, I love having raised a family here, and being able to have that part of my lifestyle at the same time that I have a world-class professional place to work like the Oceanographic Institution and the incredible people that make up that institution. That, I don't think there's anywhere else that can be reproduced. And that's why I'm here, 25 years later and having no plans to go anywhere else.
Our largest full-time workforce in the Y is our childcare field, which also means healthcare costs. And so employing this workforce is incredibly difficult because every regulation that changes pretty much around being an employer has a direct and significant financial impact on the organization that is working to employ these amazing people who deserve to be paid $90,000 a year to raise our most precious gifts on this planet. Our children are our future. And so it's not just about the childcare resources, it's about the resources that we must lose as a result of being an employer as well. And I don't know if you want to mention any of those dollar amounts because we need your help with some of those as well. And believe me, I am not anti-minimum wage being raised. This is exactly the audience of workforce that is earning minimum wage and deserves to make more for what they're doing, taking care of our babies all day long. But it's all of the other elements that come with it.
IT consulting, and it was probably the potential Peter Principle concept, right? Like my boss wasn't doing a good job, so they fired him and they said, we're going to pick one of you, which one wants to do it? And so literally I got promoted from within the department. Retrospectively, I think that's probably the hardest thing you can do to an employee is make them be the for lack of a better term, and it's not a term I use a lot, I don't like the word boss, but to make them be a boss of their peers or the manager of their
line level employees are very insular. They're very focused on what's happening in the four walls of the organization, maybe just within the four walls of the department. They're not strategic thinkers. They're not inclined to think about how government policy affects the performance of the organization. So I think you've got to make it your mission to be very transparent about the overall operating environment. Absolutely, you need to explain what the organization is going to do, how the organization is going to do it, how the department that they operate in connects to that overall mission and goal, but it's the why. I think too often when we fail, we've not explained why we're taking these steps, why we're operating in the environment we are the way that we are, and why we're making the decisions that we're making. And I think once you get to the why, you can go from active disengagement or rebellion even for certain changes that have to be done to, okay, now I think I understand a little bit.
Opened the door and screamed at me as I walked through the door. I'm like, this is probably the end of my naval career. I mean, I've had a lot of close calls, but this could be the end. And I walked into his small office and who was sitting on the couch was the captain of the ship, who now I can see being mouthing off to somebody I work closely with. Maybe he could understand that I was just being a smart aleck and let me go. But the captain sitting there, now I was really concerned. So I walked in, he slammed the door shut. Before I looked back at all my peers and chiefs outside his office and thought, oh my God, this is goodbye guys, nice knowing you. He slammed the door shut, put his arm around me and said, see that, Captain? This is why this guy is the best. That's why he's the best officer on the ship. And he said, give me that paper, Jones. Don't ever do it again. He signed the paper, opened the door, and said, Jones, if you ever do that again, you're off this ship. You're going to be at the bottom of this. I don't want to ever see you in the wartime. You're eating scrambled eggs for lunch every day for the rest of your life. And he slammed the door shut. But so I walked out with I didn't dare smile until I walked out of his office. He was willing to bend the rules for me to get something done. He recognized that my guys were working hard and I was working hard. He made an effort to be supportive of me in that to get that work done. But the other thing for me, which was important, was it rarely doesn't work out if you go into a situation sort of looking at trying to support your team first, and even a little bit of healthy bucking the system usually comes out the other end in a good place if you're doing it on behalf of your people. So that's a lesson I sort of carried with me.
Right? You don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be that teacher you didn't like. You don't want to be that parent that you watched. You don't want to, you don't want to be those things. And so for me, it's always been about, okay, I don't want to be that. So, what do I want to be? And what I've realized is that for me, like I said, when we came in, we were discussing, first of all, I didn't know I was going to do this until Monday, so I was the substitute. And so my husband and I have been having several conversations over the last couple of days about my leadership style. I'm like, honey, what do you think my leadership style is? And he was like, I'm not touching that. So today in the office I said, I think it's somewhere between drill sergeant and mom. And one of my employees like giggled. I could hear her at her desk giggling. So nobody wanted to touch the comment. But I think it's just about treating people fairly and treating them the way you want to be treated. The way they want to be treated.
Passionate about having your age demographic come to town meeting. It is so, so vital for our communities to hear your voice and to have your input in terms of how we can best serve your interest in the business community, housing, and family life. I emphasize this, it's the one chance for the people in the town to speak directly to their elected representatives and, more importantly, to each other, so that you can educate other people about how these particular articles affect you or why you feel they're important. So this is how we learn at town meeting. We have to learn how it affects individuals like Sarah, who got up and said, she doesn't want this in her backyard. But it's also important to hear how it can benefit the town and how it might provide extra housing for people who are currently looking for housing and can't afford it. The selectmen set the warrant, all the articles that are going to be considered for town meeting, with one exception. If you feel very strongly about something that you want to change in your town, you have the ability to go out and collect a number of signatures and get that issue on the warrant. You have that power. I did that once. I brought it forward. The selectmen said, no way, not going to do it. The finance committee said, no way, not going to do it. I went to town meeting and I won the election. Those people who are running for a seat in your town will be sure to get up and speak at town meeting because they want to be seen and heard. So if you're interested in getting involved in your community more, start with a town meeting. Start with getting to know some of the committees in the town that you might have a particular interest in, like planning or zoning. Maybe you're interested in parks and recreation. There are 100 different committees that each of your towns have. But get involved at that level, start coming to town meeting, and eventually your voice can have the opportunity and the ability to change what happens in your town.